Matt Eberflus and Cole Kmet have both talked about the underutilization of the talented tight end in week one. Will it change in week two? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, Nate Davis, should he remain on as the starting right guard for the Chicago Bears? There's some interesting data that could point to Ryan Bates being ready to take over that position. All that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so, Cole Kmet, one of the things that I have talked a lot about here, I don't know what other people are doing, is that, the underutilization of Cole Kmet, how, Gerald Everett played more snaps than him, both in the preseason and so far. And so it seems like it's something that other people are asking about and questioning what's going on with the usage of Cole Kmet. And Matt Eberflus was asked that, and he said this: situationally, we had 11 personnel, one running back, one tight end, 3 receivers when he was in, and then when Everett was in. So it was the way the rotation happened. Certainly, we do want to get Cole more involved in the plan more in terms of catches and point of attack blocking and all those things. Yes, we do. But we're looking for our formula for success on offense. And again, that's going to take a little bit of time in terms of distributing the ball to the skill more evenly. And we're working on doing that this week. And so here's my personal, and then we'll get into Cole Kmet's responses to that, right? Is that, I understand that we have a new offense. I understand that we have a lot of new weapons, and we have a new rookie quarterback. And all those things are going to be there. And because of that, it's going to be a while before everything is kind of this well-oiled machine. It just is. It's part of the reason why this past offseason, even after drafting Caleb Williams, I told everyone, like, hey, it's going to take a little bit of a while. And, there were some responses from some fans saying things like, oh, but if he's this generational quarterback, we don't have to be patient. Like, it's more than just Caleb Williams part of it, right? It's the moving part of the entire offense. Now, I do think that with per Shane Waldron's reputation, the 2 tight end sets, how he utilizes tight ends, that we would have seen more of that both in preseason and in week one. But the key thing is that they're looking at it, that they've talked about it, and I hope that their actions match their words. And if it does, this could be something that we don't even talk about the rest of the season, right? I think we've seen now the offense stagnate, and it was bad. And, we hope, of course, that it's nothing but looking up for the offense going forward, but you got to use your weapons more often. And I get it, finding the balance of how you use those weapons. But you have a guy who in Cole Kmet had 73 receptions for 719 yards last year and 6 touchdowns. That's a weapon that's proven. You shouldn't take multiple weeks to figure out how to use that guy, right? Most offenses would love to have a guy like that they can go to, especially when your offense is kind of being a little bit slow to get in rhythm. And so ultimately, I hope that this is something that maybe this is the last week that we talk about it. Maybe after this week, we don't have to talk about the utilization of Cole Kmet. We don't have to talk about the fact that he should have lined up as a tight end more. We don't have to talk about the fact he should have got more targets. Hopefully, this is the last week of that, but it's going to take some growth and development of all the pieces to do it. And like I've been saying, literally for the offense since week one and even before, some patience is deserved, but incompetency doesn't deserve impatience. And right now, I can't and I won't. It'd be unfair for me to call it incompetency yet. But if this is something that continues on, that does become incompetency, and that is something that's not excusable. Finding your balance, finding your way, all right, that I understand that. But incompetency is something that we can't stand for here, and I hope the coaching staff isn't going to stand for, because we have too many weapons to get this shit done. Now, for the credit, Cole Kmet came out and said this: it is what it is. I don't know what else to say. It wasn't a great showing offensively. We got a new quarterback, a new offensive system, and we're trying to put things together here. We've got a lot of new guys in. We're figuring it out for sure. We'll see how it goes this week. Now, everybody can take away their own thoughts from it. Let me know, please, down below how you feel about those comments from Cole Kmet. But I'll say my own personal thoughts on it. That doesn't feel like a guy who it feels ultimately confident in the people in the decisions that are being made around him, right? The whole "it is what it is," like, I get it. That could be taken at absolutely, and I don't want to fearmonger. it very well could be. I'm going to take Cole Kmet as his word. There's been nothing that Cole Kmet has ever said to make me think he's going to blow smoke up anybody's ass, right? And so because of that, I'm going to give it some credit and say, hey, maybe Cole Kmet is right. Maybe he's practicing some patience, the same patience that I say that Bears fans need to practice. Maybe that's what he's doing here. And if that's the case, that's perfectly fine and dandy. But when it comes down to it, we need to see a better performance from our offense. We need to utilize our weapons better and build confidence. The last thing that you want is to Greg Olsen this shit. You don't want to Greg Olsen this shit. And if that gets to the point of where this gets to, that's bad, right? So you don't want that. And hopefully we're not getting to that. Like I said before, hopefully at the end of the day, this is all something that we'll look at and we'll say it don't matter. It was 1 week. We were much better after that. We utilized Cole Kmet. We utilized the 2 tight end sets, and our offense is looking much better for it. But Cole Kmet is a weapon that should be used. And you locked him into a new contract. He performed extremely well last season, having a career year. Reward that. Give him the opportunity to have the ball in his hands and to make some plays. To make plays. Now, overall, our passing offense was trash worst in the NFL. So there's only going to be so many opportunities when you can't pass the ball to save your life. So that's an aspect of it as well. We have to be a more well-oiled machine, and we got to get better in those aspects of the football game. And hopefully that all starts coming around for this team, and we get to the place where, like I said, we're utilizing our weapons more. And we may have to. Listen, depending on what happens with Keenan Allen, depending on what happens with Rome Odunze and their availability going into next week's game, hopefully that we have to, well, not hopefully, but we may have to rely on more of Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet and get creative in how we line them up. That may be something that just has to happen via the nature of us missing out. Hopefully we're not missing both those guys, but if we are, 2 tight end sets can be our best friend at that case, right? So let's see how things are going to adapt. A little bit frustrating, a little bit concerning because, like I said, I pointed that out early in the preseason, and it was something that has held true through one regular season game so far. But let's hope that the tides of change are rolling in, and not only is our offense going to start playing and performing better, but we start utilizing talents like Cole Kmet, like DeAndre Swift more in the running game, using him some in the passing game as well. Hopefully we start utilizing these talents better because it's pointless to have them if you ain't going to use them. But one thing that hurts the ability to use your weapons is the offensive line. And so one of the aspects of that is Nate Davis. Nate Davis did not play great at all, and that's been highlighted. So there's an actual article out in which they looked at the offensive plays, and they graded it by either a plus play, a check play, or a minus play. So take that for what you will. Plus play is, of course, a play that you did great at. A check play is where you kind of check, you did positives, and a minus is where you played terribly. So when you look at this before, going into looking at Nate Davis and the Ryan Bates debate, Nate Davis only played 18 snaps before being removed and replaced by Ryan Bates. And in those 18 snaps that Ryan Bates played, by this metric that was given, he had 3 plus plays, 9 check plays, and 6 minus plays. That's just what he had. So, it was overall bad. And when you look at it over the course of that, is that Ryan Bates played, more plays than Nate Davis did, but all his plays counted as check plays. So at least plays where he was doing what he needed to do, and 2 of them were graded as minuses. So this is just another interesting article and a way to kind of judge the utilization and the performance of your players. And I thought that this was an interesting one, more so than just looking at, the typical, pro football focus grades and things like that. So this is an interesting way to kind of look at how the protection was from your offensive line and to try to start figuring out what needs to happen. And now, again, I don't expect the Chicago Bears to make a big change in their offensive line in 1 week. I just don't expect it to happen. I don't necessarily expect Nate Davis to lose his starting position coming out of 1 week, but there are some signs there that is something that the Bears need to start looking at and start evaluating, especially when Ryan Bates is playing better than Nate Davis in that. So when you look at it as well, that Nate Davis on the they quoted directly as saying that he was a roller coaster, meaning it was all up and down in the level of performance that he gave, while as Ryan Bates gave a steady amount of production. And so while it wasn't always outstanding, where it didn't necessarily grade out as like plus plays where he did something spectacular, it was a better baseline of what Ryan Bates was able to do And that's the thing that you have to look at, grading him out and saying he was at the right place at the right time. His footwork was solid. In almost every play he was in a position to make his block. And he, didn't always do it perfectly, but he was in that position. And more times than not, he did exactly what was needed to do in his play. And what's something that we've talked about with this offensive line, it wasn't necessarily about in 1 year going from being a terrible offensive line to one of the best in the NFL. It's about getting into the level of competency. And if Ryan Bates continues to show more competency in the way he's executing out there for the Bears have to take a look at what they're going to do with Nate Davis. And so that's something as well. Also, in this grading that they looked at, they pointed out the fact that he was extremely disciplined in pass protection. And while there were some plays where the defensive lineman would run a stunt, that he didn't pick up the wrong assignment, that he always passed to the drive man at the right time, and that he waited patiently to come back and fill his gap. And then also guarding linebackers at times on the blitz. So it seems like via only data from one game, right? And this is what the all 22 is revealing, is that through that one game, it looks like Ryan Bates considerably outperformed Nate Davis in both run blocking and pass blocking in last week's game. And that, if something is continued with that, you have to look at that if you're trying to improve your team. And this article came from Matt Rooney, so I wanted to quote him on this from Bleacher Nation. So make sure you guys go out and check this out. It was a really detailed article, and I love the way that he thought this out and presented the information. So looking at it, like I said, as far as the plus plays, which is an exceptional job, the check plays, average or he did his job, or the minus and when he got beat or just didn't do his job, the fact that Nate Davis, had, of course, more exceptional plays, but he had also more minus plays, whereas Ryan Bates was just a lot more consistent in the effort and the production that he gave. That's something that you can build on. Now, the hope is that Nate Davis brings his play more consistent, right, and that he eliminates, because if you eliminate those minus plays, the fact that you have check plays, that you have the plus plays, that's there, is that there is still enough, even with Nate Davis kind of being that roller coaster, there's enough there that if he can solve the minus plays, that he still can be back to being a Pro Bowl, lineman. But again, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? That's if he can do that. Now it's up to Nate Davis to go out and prove that he can do that and he can be that consistently. And I know people are going to have a different level of faith of what they see in that, but let's hope that we see that from Nate Davis. Listen, I get it. Nate Davis has lost a lot of faith from Chicago Bears fans, rightfully so. I want to be clear. He's lost a lot of them. And some Bears fans are never going to come back around to Nate Davis until the end of the season if he plays consistently throughout the season from this part on, right? That just is what it is. That's the nature of being a Chicago Bear. The fans, we hang people out to dry. It's what we do. It is what it is, right? And I'm not saying each and every one of you or even me do it consistently, but as a fan base, that is something that we do here. It is what it is. I've come to that realization about a decade ago, being a Bears fan my whole life, right? That's just something that comes with the territory of being a Bear. But Nate Davis, his performance can win it around. You got a 3-year guaranteed deal, $30 million, $10 million each. And this could end up, there's still a chance that Nate Davis could end up one of the worst deals that Ryan Poles gave up, but there's still a chance there that he can turn it around. One game into a 17-game season, I'm not going to write the story on him yet or necessarily say it's going to be a wasted season for Nate Davis yet, but things aren't trending in the way that make me feel comfortable as of yet. Let's hope that they can turn it around. But I want to hear from you guys on this. And I'll try to do my best at linking the article down below as well, as far as just, so you guys can take a look at this data, on your own. It was, like I said, really good data outside of it. And he even points out in this, I love that he, looks at the article this way and saying that, Ryan Bates, not saying that Ryan Bates is all of a sudden going to turn into some all-pro guard or center, but again, it's the fact that that as an interior offensive lineman, that you're looking at how he bottoms out. And so far in his performances in that game, he didn't bottom out. He did what needed to be done more times than not, and you didn't have the large fall off that you had in some plays from Nate Davis. And the fact that it only took 18 snaps before Nate Davis got pulled out for Ryan Bates, I think that shows as well that this coaching staff may also be looking at the performance of Nate Davis and, desiring a little bit more there. But as always, let me know what you guys feel on that down below. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Let's get into the next topic for today, and that's Tyreek Stevenson was named as the NFC Defensive Player of the Week, and this was well-earned. It could have really come down to either him or Jalen Johnson, really, when you look at it. Jalen Johnson, who graded out as the best corner in the game of football last week, But Tyreek Stevenson and what he was able to do in that game, a 43-yard interception return that locked and sealed in that game in the fourth quarter for the comeback for your team. No, you definitely deserve to get Defensive Player of the Week. And this is something that Tyreek Stevenson has so much growth and potential still left to do in him. He's in his second year, and he's already done something that's only been done a handful of times in Chicago Bears history. Tyreek Stevenson, this is his second time being named as the Defensive Player of the Week. He also got that in Week 17 of the 2023 season. So he's starting off this season, whereas the last season kind of ended for him. Of course, there's 18 weeks now, but there you go there. Tyreek Stevenson became the fourth Chicago Bears defensive back to earn multiple Defensive Player of the Week. He joins Charles Tillman, three-time winner there. We already know what Peanut Tillman means to the Chicago Bears and the history of the Chicago Bears. Mike Brown, who did it twice, right? And Eddie Jackson, who also did it twice. So he's already up there tied for second all-time in most Defensive Player of the Weeks for a Chicago Bears defensive back. With so much career left ahead of him, he could absolutely run away with having the record for this for the Chicago Bears. And so, you guys know, I've said it a lot. You guys have seen me talk about it a lot. This secondary group is one of the groups I am most confident in for the Chicago Bears team. We had the voicemail, a couple of weeks ago in which it was talked about, and somebody said, "Hey, I'm not too confident about these defensive backs in the secondary on deep passes," and we still got to see how that's going to come around. But listen, this secondary is stacked. I'm telling y'all right now. You got Jalen Johnson, who is a lockdown corner, whether he's getting interceptions or not. We talked about that earlier this week. A 2.8 QB rating when you pass to Jalen Johnson in week 1. Listen, Jalen Johnson is here to take names this season for anybody who doubted him, and he's going to have a Pro Bowl, All-Pro, whatever season, and he's going to be on that top 100 list. You add to that Kyler Gordon and what he's going to do in blitzing and in coverage, being that nickel cornerback. You have now Tyreek Stevenson as well. Like, you guys know the names. Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, Terrell Smith. You got the names here, right? And so this secondary group is going to be such an interesting group to watch how things develop for them over the course of the season, because there is so much talent in this group that, quite honestly, it's ridiculous. This may be one of the most talented defensive back groups in the game of football, much less in Chicago Bears history when it's all said and done. I think that this defensive back group is going to be one that we look back on and take a look at. And as long as they continue to lock them in, right, it's going to be a group that they're going to have to make some tough decisions on as far as contract-wise as these guys start coming up for contract extensions. That's why you see them keep a ready Stewart on the practice squad, because they're going to have to make some tough decisions sooner rather than later. The fact that you've drafted all these guys basically in back-to-back seasons as well, their contract extensions is going to be coming up one after each other. So, we'll see. I don't want to, worry about that too far in advance. We're still a couple of years removed from when we really got to worry about that, but it is coming. And, Tyreek Stevenson, shout out to him for getting Defensive Player of the Week. It was well-earned, well-deserved. And, like I said, we had another guy who could have been a candidate for that award, and that should tell you how good this defensive back group can be this week for the Chicago Bears, and this season for the Chicago Bears. But before we go, I want to talk about, what to look out for as far as statistically against the Houston Texans. Now, we only have 1 week of data, so this isn't necessarily the best data to look at, but it's what I did last season. We're going to bring it back this year. We're going to look at that data. And so far, in scoring offense, the Houston Texans were 7. So that means that this defensive unit for the Chicago Bears, you cannot afford to have I won't say they had a bad first half, but it wasn't as good. We need a consistent effort from our defense in this game against the Houston Texans, because they put up 29 points. Did the offense do? The offense put in 29 points, last week for the Houston Texans. So they're going to be trying to put up points. This is a team that a lot of people do have as a potential Super Bowl contender. So you got to be prepared for that. The passing offense, 204 yards passing last week for the Houston Texans. That's 11th in the NFL, whereas the Chicago Bears came away at 32nd, dead last in the NFL. So look out for that. The rushing defense. The Houston Texans were number 1 in rushing offense last week, getting 213 yards on the ground last week. Compared to that, over 200 yards passing. Yes, this is a potent offense that the Chicago Bears have to be ready for. The Houston Texans were also second in total offense last week at 417 yards. From the offense, we had 148. That's the difference that's coming in here. The Bears got to be prepared. First downs, they were also first at 26 first downs in week 1. The Bears, 11. We got to be prepared. Penalties. This is a very disciplined team. 30 yards, penalty yards for them. That's 5th in the NFL. The Bears had 55. So, again, you got to be prepared for this. And the Houston Texans only allowed 4 sacks last week. That's 3rd in the NFL. We got to be prepared for that. So, you got to be prepared for everything that's going to happen for this offense. This is an offense you cannot overlook at all. You just can't. And if you do, it's going to be ugly for you. But the Houston Texans as well have some things that they shortcome on. They were 18th in passing yards allowed last week at 199. Now, the Bears didn't have very much. We only allowed, as a defense, 104. So, again, their passing offense against our passing defense is going to be an interesting battle to watch. And then their rushing defense, they allowed for 104 yards. So we got to be prepared for that one as well. So that's something as well that you have to look at. We got to be prepared, and we'll see how this team performs. But this is a matchup where the defense has to be on its heels all game long. And if they're not, the Houston Texans are coming to make them pay. And we'll see what that ultimately means, guys. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bear Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.